Hello and welcome, my friends. Welcome back to my Astrology 101. In today's session, you got it, the rest of the planets. Now, if you're just finding my Astrology 101, please know I have started this process. Actually, many weeks ago, I started this process where I started off with your astrological birth chart and have been giving you the building blocks to understand it. We've gone through the zodiac, we've gone through your personal planets, and today, yep, here we go. We're going through the rest of them. If you're looking for my other Astrology 101s, I'll put a card above and a link below to that playlist so you can go in and start getting that foundation that's going to help you so very much in understanding your astrological birth chart. Of course, we're going to kick off with Jupiter. As we left off with Mars, which was the fourth planet from the sun, Jupiter's the fifth. This is my brief science on Jupiter. It's the largest planet in our solar system. It is a gas giant that is about 2.5 times bigger than all the other planets. He's the big daddy. Now, I don't know how they've counted all these, but there's at least 97 moons orbiting this planet. It's that big. And it takes about 11.86 years to orbit the sun. And this beautiful stylized 4 is the symbol you will see in your astrological birth chart or any astrological documents referring to Jupiter. Now on to the mythology. Of course, Jupiter is named after the Roman god Jupiter, who is the sky father, the god of the sky and thunder, who is connected in to the Greek god Zeus, who is the chief god of the divine, and is also the god of sky and thunder. And in that right-hand corner is a sculpture of Jupiter. Now, Jupiter, this is more, we're getting into the woo-woo part now. It's connected into Thursday, the major arcana, because I am a tarot girl, the Wheel of Fortune, the colors associated with Jupiter, orange, gold, yellow, white. Crystals, carnelian, citrine, sunstone, and smoky quartz. Now, Jupiter, the planet, when you're looking at that astrology piece, is associated with wisdom, spirituality, higher learning. It represents expansion, growth, and abundance. When we're working with Jupiter, it helps us find our perspective, ambition, and our worldview. And that's through our lifetime. So depending on where Jupiter rises in your astrological birth chart, this is where you're seeing the formation of these aspects. Additionally, it will help to shape the collective consciousness and societal trends for humanity as a whole. And on to Jupiter in retrograde. I did in my personal planet session explain what a retrograde is, as I did so in my where I explored those personal planets. However, when Jupiter does go into retrograde, what happens is we become more reclusive. We become a little bit more uncensored with our material wealth, and there's a tendency to be a little bit more greedy when Jupiter is in retrograde. Additionally, this retrograde does bring in some detours, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, as it can help you do a little bit of course correction with a little bit of a greater ease. Additionally, this retrograde does test to ensure that you are ready for what it is you seek. You're ready for that next adventure. Think of it as those quests that the gods gave to their champions. Same idea. All right, let's get into it. What does it mean for you, for Jupiter in your astrological birth chart? Well, wherever Jupiter comes in your astrological birth chart, whichever house, so those little pie chunks, wherever it is in your astrological birth chart, you're looking at seeking more knowledge and exploring some diverse perspectives of that aspect. Jupiter will help you to embrace lifelong learning and engage in philosophical and spiritual pursuits. Jupiter also indicates your belief system and personal philosophy in that area of your life. And don't worry, my friends, like I've said before, I'm going through each section and I'm chunking it so that it doesn't become overwhelming. I will go through the houses at a later date. Jupiter helps to facilitate deep introspective, inner exploration, and connection with the divine. Also, he will help to urge you to step out of your comfort zone and embrace new opportunities. Like I just said, that adventure, those quests, new opportunities. Jupiter is, of course, associated with luck, abundance, and good fortune, and will influence your sense of optimism and faith in whatever area Jupiter rises in. Now, it does happen. You can have Jupiter in retrograde. As it does take so long for Jupiter to orbit the sun, the retrograde lasts for about 4 months of the year. So you have a really good chance of having Jupiter in retrograde because of how long it stays in retrograde for a full year. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's how Jupiter was in orbit when you were born. There's nothing you can do but work with these energies. So when you do have Jupiter in retrograde in your astrological birth chart, very often you're having a different or unusual perspective, belief system, and or set of morals. Additionally, many times your relationships or events in your life will reinforce your life problem areas. And unfortunately can reinforce some of these unusual or different belief systems and perspectives. You have to remember that Jupiter, he's the big daddy. He does impact our belief systems and perspectives. He also, unfortunately, will reinforce problem areas because of everyday events or relationships. It just reinforces not only the problem areas, but it can reinforce some of these unusual belief systems. When Jupiter is in retrograde in your birth chart, lots of questioning of confidence, lots of moments of self-doubt, and lots of amplified feelings of anxiety, that worry, those fears. Additionally, this retrograde, like all retrogrades, brings things inward. And as Jupiter deals with the higher knowledge and philosophy, well, that's brought inwards. And many times people with this retrograde, they get stuck in their head. They kind of live in their head. And many times because things are brought inwards, people with this retrograde like to learn from their own experiences and reactions to those experiences. They need to do it hands-on. Now, again, this is going to depend on where Jupiter is in your astrological birth chart. Additionally, and this is why I started off with the zodiac, what zodiac it rises in, and in what pie chunk it lands. And I will go through those pie chunks, those houses as they call it, at a later date. From Jupiter, we go to that beautiful planet of Saturn. The science piece, of course. We're counting up here, guys. The 6th planet, the 2nd largest planet in the solar system. It is that gas giant. And it is known for that beautiful, bright, extensive ring system that the planet has. Again, I don't know who has to count all these moons, but Saturn has at least 247 moons. I couldn't imagine trying to count those. It does take 29.45 years to orbit the sun. And onto the mythology. Of course, we are looking at the Roman god Saturn, who is the god of the capital, time, wealth, agriculture, and liberation. He is connected to the Greek god Cronus, who was the leader of the Titans and also the god of time, harvest, and the golden age. And of course, in the top right corner is a relief of the god Saturn. Now, Saturn, of course, is connected into Saturday. The major arcana, the world, the colors associated with Saturn, black, green, and brown, those beautiful crystals, amethyst, garnet, and aquamarine. Now, Saturn in itself in astrology, it represents rules, boundaries, limits, responsibilities, discipline, and authority. Saturn governs the systems and structures that shape our society. Saturn helps us to understand how these external forces impact your life. Now, when you have Saturn go into retrograde, outwardly, you look stoic and in control of self. Inwardly, you're a mess. Many times when Saturn is in retrograde, you can pick one of two camps. One, you are controlling, rigid, and you micromanage your world. Others, you resist authority and you have zero ambition to do anything. You can jump from camp to camp during the retrograde. However, you're usually in one of those two camps. Additionally, because we are looking at the time, past, present, and future can kind of blur into one. And it can get kind of hard because those past pieces, those traumas, can come up. All right, let's jump in to what it looks like for Saturn in your astrological birth chart. Now, Saturn's presence in your birth chart, it points towards the area of life where you can make the most significant personal growth. Again, Saturn, depending on when you were born, where you were born, will where Saturn is in your birth chart. Of course, wherever Saturn rises, you are looking at the impact of karma, cycles, and how much patience you have towards life and your adventure. You're also looking at lessons, fears, limitations, and challenges. Your perspective on discipline, control, form, and order. Additionally, boundaries, structures, and restrictions. Some of us like them a lot, and some of us not so much. Now, again, because of how long it takes Saturn to wrap around the sun, Saturn is in retrograde for 4.5 months every year. And the further away from the sun we go, the more likelihood you have these planets in retrograde because they spend longer and longer in retrograde. So, Saturn in retrograde in your chart. You internalize everything and you're afraid of everything. However, you do try to put a brave face on. Again, outwardly stoic, inwardly a mess. And a big part of your fears is letting down others or not fulfilling your responsibilities. Again, this has a lot to do with those structures, that routine, that conformity, and that control. And many times with this retrograde, people are uncomfortable with overly orderly or disciplined lives. There can be a lot of resistance to that authoritarian energy or perspective from others. Parents, yeah, the relationship can be very strained depending on which pie chunk or house Saturn in retrograde rises in. And also what zodiac, because some will internalize the disrespect for parents but not verbalize it. Additionally, when we have this retrograde, it's really hard for people with this retrograde to put their thoughts into words and establish, and more importantly, maintain healthy boundaries. Additionally, we're looking at some low self-esteem, depression, guilt, loneliness, and that tired energy. Because again, there is that connection to time. Speaking of time, I know we've been going on for a while. We're halfway through. This is a great time to remind people that my Patreon community does get cheat sheets for all these one-on-one sessions, so they don't have to take notes and they have easy access to all the information that I'm sharing. And of course, like always, my friends, there's a link below to my Patreon community, so you can come check it out and get some extra notes and support with this learning. I won't lie, this is one of my favorite planets, Uranus. The science here, of course, and not surprisingly, the 7th planet from the sun. This is a gaseous ice giant. There are 28 natural satellites, 18 are known as regular moons, and 13 are considered smaller inner moons. It takes about 84 years to orbit the sun. And as you can see, like I said, it's taking longer and longer. These retrogrades get longer and longer. Onto the mythology of Uranus. This is why I had Roman gods and Greek gods split, because there is no Roman god connected to the planet Uranus. It's the Greek god Uranus. He's a primordial god, and he is the personification of the sky. And this is a statue of Uranus. Now, the planets moving forward from Saturn are not connected to any form of time because it has another way for you to connect to that planet. These outer planets do not have that. However, they do have tarot, the major arcana, the Fool. The colors connected to Uranus, blue, aqua, and green. The crystals connected in amazonite, labradorite, sodalite, and turquoise. Uranus. He is known as the Great Awakener. He is connected into dramatic changes, technology, modern life, freedom, independence, enhancing your intuition, and eccentricity. In retrograde, those eccentric tastes come to the forefront, and you have this need to be truly you. That inner rebel, it comes forward like no one's business. There is a fear to change, so there is that clinging to old ways and a lot of mistrust of new technology and improvements. Additionally, sometimes we can have some technological challenges when Uranus is in retrograde because there is that clinging to old ways, and we kind of revert and kind of forget how to use some of these pieces. Now let's jump into Uranus in your birth chart. So wherever Uranus rises, you're looking at that revolutionary, eccentric energy. Lots of discovery, inventive, and dramatic changes occur in this house or pie chunk. And you find that there's a facilitating, enlightening breakthroughs in this area of your life with some stunning breakdowns. The rebel, radical, and unorthodox thinking, it kind of spikes a little bit. Like I said, we are seeing that retrograde for a longer time, for about 5 months every year. And of course, you've got those symbols. Now, please note, guys, sometimes the RX is connected right into the symbol of the planet. So it's kind of a singular symbol. However, the RX is there. When you have Uranus in retrograde in your birth chart, there is this deep-seated need to be yourself and find out more about yourself. However, at the same time, there can be a fear to being you, that eccentric, awesome self. They find it harder to be themselves without causing distress to others or themselves, and they don't want that. You can also have another camp where they don't care. They are going to be themselves no matter what. This is going to be dependent on where Uranus is in retrograde, with what zodiac and what house. It can also take longer for individuals with Uranus in retrograde to connect in and embrace with social trends and changes, because again, there's that fear and resistance. Now, there is an internalization of Uranus's disruptive electric energy. Uranus has quite the energy to it. It likes to bring on change, lots of big, bold changes. So it's got that big, bold energy. And when you're internalizing that big, bold energy, it can lead to nervousness, anxiety, spasms. I love this, neurotic behavior, and rapid personality changes. Again, not wanting to cause discomfort to self or others. There can be a disconnection from reality and established order. Wherever Uranus in retrograde comes in on your chart, if it does, this shows the sphere of life that will be most impacted by karmic residue. So, some challenges and a lot of internalization with Uranus in retrograde. On to Neptune. On to the science portion of our Neptune journey. It is the 8th planet from the sun. It is the densest gas giant. The surface of Neptune is primarily gas and liquids, and there's not a lot of well-defined solid surfaces. Like I said, as you get further out, it takes a lot more years to orbit the sun, 164.8 years. Of course, Neptune, named after the Roman god Neptune, who is the god of the sea, who is very much connected in and interrelated to the Greek god Poseidon, who is the god of sea, storms, earthquakes, and horses. And this is, of course, a sculpture of Neptune. Neptune is connected into the hangman. The colors associated with Neptune: deep blue, green, and lavender. The crystals: aquamarine, lapis lazuli, and kyanite. Neptune, when you're looking at it and working with it in the spiritual sense, it is known as the planet of dreams, illusions, and spirituality. Working with Neptune helps to shed light on the deeper forces at play in the cosmos and how they shape our world and our lives. Now, Neptune is a slower planet, and this slower movement can often make reference to that generational influence and sometimes trauma that occurs in our life. The retrogrades, oh yeah, the vivid imagination and dreamy state comes in. Escapism and fantasy illusions are high. Sometimes those boundaries, they tend to disappear altogether, which opens us up to deception and delusions. The delusions, they come in too with the vivid imagination and dreamy state. Additionally, on the swing side, when Neptune is in retrograde, it can strip away some of that illusion that we have put in place to kind of buffer and protect ourselves. And we're faced with that cold, harsh reality, which can again bring in a lot of mental health issues. And we're looking at some of that trauma state coming forward again. All right, let's look at how Neptune plays out in an astrological birth chart. Well, Neptune is the ruler of illusion, that inner knowing and trusting our instincts, and helps to fine-tune our psychic abilities. Wherever it comes in, you're going to start to see some of that inner knowing and psychic abilities start to bubble to the surface. That can be very helpful at times and really not so helpful in others, depending on which part of your chart it's rising in. Neptune, like I said before, can help dissolve boundaries, which can be great because it can enhance creativity and spirituality in that area of your life. Neptune helps to govern inspiration, compassion, and transcendence. He can also encourage us to seek higher truths. Lots of creativity and imagination connected into Neptune and wherever it comes in your birth chart, and can highlight deceit, guilt, illusions, and addictions. Now again, when we have Neptune in retrograde, it's with us for about 5 months every year. So you have a great chance of having Neptune in retrograde in your astrological birth chart. When you do have Neptune in retrograde, again, there's a lot of internalization of this energy. So there's a lot of hiding of vulnerabilities and hiding their spiritual side. And a lot of times when you have Neptune in retrograde, there's a lot of profoundly spiritual people who struggle to express it. Many times there's a lot of natural mistrust and afraid of being let down by others. And additionally, people with Neptune in retrograde can have a heightened sensitivity to emotions and other energies. Like I said, Neptune in imagination and creativity, high intense imagination. And sometimes, depending on the person, where it's coming in and with what, it can be hard for them to tell the difference between the dream state and the real world. Lots of second guessing, which create confusion and uncertainty in their lives. And because there is a lot of blurring of lines, those addictions that I'd mentioned earlier, very known to the person, and they rely heavily on them. So, yes, I know, Pluto. I don't even want to discuss how they strip the planet status from him. It makes me very sad. I will go into Pluto. However, this video is getting very long, and I do want to cut it here so you guys can start to process some of the information that I've just given you. Like I said, I do have cheat sheets for my Patreon community. So if you're looking for a little added support, I did leave a link below to my Patreon community, and you can come check it out. There's a lot more than cheat sheets provided in my community. I do want to thank you for spending this time with me and exploring these planets. They're important, and how they interrelate with you in your astrological birth chart. I will be going in more depth into the planets and the houses, the planets and the zodiac at a later date, as I did not want to overwhelm you with all this information. Now, if you did enjoy this session, please give it a thumbs up and let me know which planet is in retrograde in your birth chart. And if you haven't done so, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any further posts. Because like I've said before, I've got a lot coming forward. Again, I want to thank you for joining me in this exploration of these beautiful planets that make up our solar system. Until tomorrow, my friends.